Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to my Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Thank you. Welcome to the party, pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 61. I have Michael Cargill, who is owner of Central Texas Gunworks here in Austin. He's also been a long time advocate of gun rights and is very involved politically as well. And he's going to talk about the current situation with guns in America and what we're doing with things like what's happening with things like the bump stock ban and other things like that. How are you, Michael?
Doing great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. First of all, how long have you been doing this work?
I've probably been in the gun business for about 20 years. We've been here at Central Texas Gunworks at this particular location for over 12 years, going on 13 years now. I think we're in our 13th year. And I've been a licensed to carry handgun instructor, since early part of 2000. I was in the military, served 12 years in the United States Army. I was an armor in the Army as well as other things in the military. I got out of the Army back in 1999, and it's a funny story because I got out of the Army in 1999, and I actually started working for a telecommunications company, out of Austin. Back then, it was called Lucent Technologies, and then I actually went to a different company called IP Communications. Went to that company, was there for a little while, and then I decided to start my own trucking company. Totally changed gears altogether. Went away from telecommunications and started doing trucking. I started moving elevators around the country for a company called Schindler Elevator. So I did that for quite a while, and then I started the gun store. I actually wanted to just teach classes. I wanted to teach people how to shoot. I wanted to teach the licensed carry handgun courses, certify people to get their license, tell them, teach them the laws and stuff like that. I didn't really want to get into the gun sales of it, but, lo and behold, I got into the gun sales in 2011, 2012, and then boom, here we are today, 2023, still, putting them out.
Yeah. So, so that's good. So, what's going on right now that you think's the biggest threat to gun owners right now?
The biggest threat is going to be this current administration. So you're looking at this administration who's been weaponized. They've actually gotten weaponized by the previous administration, by the Trump administration. And the reason I say that is because when Trump was in office, he actually started the bump stock ban. And when he did that kind of opened the door for the ATF to do whatever else they wanted to do. That was like a test case. If we can get, a Republican president to ban something or to, give us the permission to actually ban it by us making a rule, then when a Democrat president comes in, we can do a whole bunch of other things. And that's exactly what happened. To me, I don't care who's in office. I don't care what your political, I don't care if you have an R behind your name, your L behind your name, or a D behind your name, or G or whatever. I don't care what's behind your name. My stance is I'm standing up for the Second Amendment because I believe with the Second Amendment, we can defend all of our constitutional rights. So if I have the second, then I can defend everything. I can defend my freedom of speech. I can defend everything. My right to vote. I can defend everything as long as I have the second. And so anyone that comes after that, then that's my target. That person, I consider that person a threat. And so when the bump stock ban came out in 2018, basically 2018 there, need to not do this because you're talking about something that people legally purchase in the United States. I bought something, I paid for that. I have it in my house. I own it. All of a sudden, the ATF, the federal government, decided they were going to ban this particular product. And I said, that's crazy. How can a federal agency take something that we legally purchased and decide to ban it without Congress actually creating a law? They didn't go through Congress. No one wrote a bill. Didn't go through any committee. They didn't pass the House, didn't pass the Senate, and then go to the president. They just all of a sudden arbitrarily created a rule, banned it, and turned millions of Americans into felons overnight. And so I thought that was, that is like the worst thing that can possibly happen, because what happens if other agencies within the federal government decide to do this? Speed forward, COVID-19 happens, and you have other different entities in our government decided that they were going to do certain types of things. And so, yeah, so that's, to me, that was the start of it all.
This is, a very much a growing trend, though. The legislature is not legislating, and they're just saying that the executives can do it, which, the Constitution gives them the power to legislate. It doesn't say you can hand this off to somebody else, but that seems to be the case now. Yeah. For
Right.
people who may not know, what exactly is a bump stock?
All right, so bump stock actually a device that you actually attach to a rifle, and then or pistol if you want for that matter. You attach it to a rifle, and then you use the recoil, the reaction from the gun firing to actually fire the next shot or fire faster, but you're still having to pull the trigger each time for each shot. So it doesn't turn it into a machine gun. A machine gun is one action of the trigger, multiple rounds fire. But a semi-automatic, one action of the trigger, one round fires, then that's a semi-automatic. So
Yeah.
bump stock is still a semi-automatic, and it still keeps the gun in semi-automatic mode.
Yeah, and if people have never, if you've never fired a gun, you don't know what it's like when when the gun recoils on you. Or as I like to call it, kickback.
Correct.
I mean, it's sometimes it's so hard. If you're standing up, it can almost knock you down. It just you have that recoil come back, and you really feel that it's like Newton's law: for every reaction, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So yeah, so basically that just is something that makes it easier to fire faster, but
Correct.
doesn't. But you still have to pull the trigger. Yeah. So okay. Yeah. So and it's very interesting. Is Trump just try? I mean, I think Trump was always very doubtful on gun rights. I don't know whatever made anybody think he would be good on it. But so you've been challenging the bump stock ban in court, I believe, and you've actually had some
Yes.
victory there, right?
So what I did was I reached out to a bunch of different attorneys, different people, different organizations, different groups, and I was getting nowhere. I was not getting any help at all. Luckily, I reached out to an organization. They were looking for a client, and so I was looking for a good attorney, and not just any attorney. I needed an attorney that was going to go against the federal government, an attorney that was not afraid of the press and the media, an attorney that was not afraid, that actually was capable of actually standing in front of the United States Supreme Court and arguing a particular case. And I didn't want it to be a Second Amendment case. I wanted it to be a case going against an agency that's creating law, what they call the Chevron deference. And so with luck, I found a group, an organization, NCLA, and they actually took up my case. We filed a lawsuit against the ATF, the Department of Justice, and alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, and we sued them in federal court. Now, that went to the first court in 2020, I believe. 2020 during COVID. It was it was actually the first case that was held during COVID actually in the courtroom. And I don't know of any other cases that were actually in the courtroom in federal court. We didn't do it over Skype. We didn't do it over, video or anything like that. We were actually in the courtroom with face mask on and conducting this case. And so we actually lost that case in that particular court because the judge in that case, when he looked at the bump stock, he thought that the bump stock kind of made a rifle kind of like a shotgun, and so to him, in his own eyes, he was kind of relating that to a shotgun, and the shotgun was kind of like a machine gun. I don't know why. It didn't make sense to me, but so we lost that case. And it was in Austin, and I was really prepared to lose in Austin in federal court anyway. I didn't think we had a judge that would actually understand the case. So we appealed the case to the Fifth Circuit. The Fifth Circuit is the appellate court that's located in New Orleans, and they're over in Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. And so when they rule for Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi. All those cases that are in those states go to that particular appellate court. So we appealed to the Fifth Circuit. Fifth Circuit heard this case. Now, there are a majority of Republicans that were appointed to this particular court. There are about, I think, 15, maybe 16 or 17 judges. I think it's 17 judges on this particular court in this panel. Now, out of the 17 judges on this panel, and the majority of them are Republican appointed justices, I want to ask you, how many do you think we pulled that were Republican versus Democrat to hear our case, and all we needed was 3? How many do you think were Republican? How many do you think were Democrat that we pulled? We just needed 3.
I'd say 2 red and 1 blue.
Okay, so we pulled all Democrat appointed justices. All 3 were Democrats. So of course we lost that court. So then our next thing was to appeal the case to the entire Fifth Circuit to be heard en banc, what they call it, when the entire court actually hears it, all the justices. And so this is when you're standing before 17 judges, a 17-judge panel, and they're hearing the case. And so they took up the case, they threw out the previous ruling, and they accepted our case. They ruled on it, and we won. And so that happened in 2022, where they heard the case, but then the ruling came down January 2023. So we won that case in the Fifth Circuit, which means that bump stocks should have become legal. They should have been legal in Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi. And so it had to go back down to the lower court. That judge had to go ahead and release the ruling. Instead of him just telling us what we won, what was my relief, meaning that did I get my bump stocks back, or did just Texas get their bump stocks back, or did Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi get their bump stocks back? He didn't rule on the case. He just, said, hey, you won, and took his stuff home and left. So what happened was the federal government decided they were going to appeal the case, but they waited until the very last minute. They waited until April 2023, the very last day, the very last hour, just before midnight, and they appealed the case to the U.S. Supreme Court and asked for the lower court to grant a stay or an injunction, meaning that to keep bump stocks illegal in all 50 states, including Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and also wait for the case to be heard in the Supreme Court, or to accept in the Supreme Court. So the judge granted their injunction, and now we're waiting on the United States Supreme Court currently to hear this case. And so, if the Supreme Court takes up the case, they rule on the case, then boom, hopefully they'll rule in our favor. If they do, that means bump stocks will become legal in Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi. Now, for me, it's not about bump stocks. What it's about the federal government, an agency within the federal government, actually creating law is what it's about for me. So if I can win this case where we're saying that the ATF cannot create a right law, then that will affect all the cases and everything that the ATF is trying to do. Currently, right now, the ATF is trying to ban the AR pistol brace. They're trying to, ban certain triggers and things of that nature. And if we win this case in the Fifth Circuit, then that would mean that the ATF cannot create a right law.
Yeah, and hopefully that would send shockwaves to all these other agencies. I do wonder if the Supreme Court will try to uphold this, just because they don't want to. This could be very interesting. Do you have a timeline on when you think the Supreme Court might hear this, or not?
Don't know. We don't have a clue.
17 judges on a circuit court. Wow, that's kind of crazy. Is that all the circuit courts, or?
I'm not sure how all the rest of them are laid out, but yeah, there are quite a few judges on the court.
That would be very interesting to argue a case before 17 judges. I wonder if it's just one of those cases where they just kept adding judges as time went on.
No, that's just how many judges are on that panel. That's how many are in that court. And so that's typical if it's going to be heard in front of all the judges, which can be intimidating. So that's why you want someone who's experienced, who can handle answering questions from all the different judges, because they're throwing questions at you left and right.
Yeah, the original Supreme Court started out with 6, and they found out that was a problem, so that's why they I don't know how long it took, but they eventually got to 9. But what does it cost legally you're in legal fees? What does this cost?
You're talking millions of dollars.
to do all this. Yeah.
It's $1 million case. Yeah, you're talking because you're talking arguing a case all the way up to the Supreme Court, starting at the lower court. You're talking experts. You're talking different attorneys, different law firms in different cities. You're talking this case. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
I can imagine. So,
And you're talking about a case that actually will affect anywhere from 10 million to 40 million Americans. There are people right now that I had to walk into the gun store today, because they have until tomorrow, May 31st, to actually do their paperwork and get their paperwork completed for the ATF brace ban. And if they don't, after the 31st, starting June 1st, the ATF is going to start um, enforcement. They may come down and start arresting people. And so I had a couple people walk in today in a complete panic because they didn't have their paperwork submitted to the ATF yet. And so, it's crazy, and that's why we're doing this.
yeah.
And so, for people that don't know, I can tell you what the brace, what the brace band is. So it's the brace is like a device that goes on the back of your rifle or pistol, and it's designed to wrap around your arm. I can actually go get one really quick. Just one sec.
Yeah.
All right, so it wraps around your arm. Looks like this, okay?
Yeah.
All right, and it's designed to. Let me make sure I'm doing this on the camera. It's designed to go around your arm, so that way you can shoot a pistol, AR pistol, with one arm, because a pistol is designed to be fired by one arm, not two like a rifle. And so this goes on the buttstock of the AR pistol, and the ATF considers that to be a SBR, short barrel rifle, because people were shouldering it. They were putting it on their shoulder instead of putting it on their wrist like they're supposed to. So they decided to actually ban these, just like the bump stock. They actually took the exact wording of the bump stock ban, and they replaced bump stock with AR pistol brace, and that's how they ended up banning the AR pistol brace, by using the exact same wording.
Yeah.
And so that went into effect on January 31st of 2023. As of January 31st of 2023, if you had an AR pistol brace, you were in possession of a felony. And there are anywhere from 10 to 40 million of those out here in the United States right now. No one knows the exact number. Some people say 10, someone says 40 million, but there are quite a few of them. And so they banned those on January 31st. People have from January 31st until May 31st to file their paperwork for an SBR, to turn it from a illegal gun to a legal gun, get it registered with the ATF, and make it an SBR. They have until May 31st to do that. And after May 31st, they'll have to pay a $200 tax stamp fee for it, and then they're actually in possession of something that's actually illegal, and that the ATF is actually enforcing the rule on. So they can actually be arrested starting May 31st.
And today we're recording on May 30th, so that's tomorrow. So you mentioned it costs millions of dollars to hear these court cases, and obviously you probably had to go to New Orleans for the court case, and you probably have to go. Would you have to go to DC, or would somebody do that?
Absolutely, yeah. So I was in court in Austin, I was in court in New Orleans, and I'll be in court in Washington D.C. when this case is heard.
So what do you think is the overall direction of the country right now? Do you think it's as bad as it was? Is it getting worse? Where do you think we're going here? Just with gun rights in America, it seems like to me we've held. I don't know if we've held the ground or not, but it's. Compared to say when you went into the military, do you think it's better or worse, or where do you think we're going with all this?
Well, as long as we have a court that actually looks at the Second Amendment and looks at our Constitution and actually rule on the way the forefathers believe the way the Constitution should, actually is read. If they rule on it that way, then that means that it will stay intact. But if they don't, then we're going to be in for a world of hurt. This country was founded on firearms. It was founded by people using guns. It was formed by people using guns. And so I think the problem here today in 2023, and as we move forward, you're seeing different shootings that are happening because for one thing or the other, whether it's someone have a mental breakdown or whatever is going on, they're using that because someone is using a tool to kill a bunch of people, whether it's a car, whether it's a skateboard, whether it's a bat. They're using a firearm. It doesn't matter what tool they use. For some reason, they're coming after firearms. They're saying, "Hey, because guns, it's a gun, and they're focusing on a gun, and that's it, and that's all they're worried about." So for some reason, they're targeting that, and so you have this group of people that just want to ban guns, and they'll tell you, "Our goal is not to ban your firearm. Our goal is not to come after your gun. We just want some sensible gun laws." But then you give them an inch, they'll take the mile. So honestly, what
Yeah,
we have to do is we have to hold the line and not give them anything, because the more you give them, then they're going to go that next step. So it's best just to hold the line, hold what you got, and not give them an inch.
yeah. Who are some of the best organizations to support and get involved with nowadays?
You have the firearms uh, policy coalition. They're good. Yeah. Um, Gun Owners of America, they're great. There are a lot of good organizations that are out there. And I'm not a part of anyone's organization. I'm just one person, Michael Cargill, myself, that has had. I have several lawsuits, and people can go to my website, michaelcargill.com. You'll see all the different lawsuits that I'm involved in right now against the federal government or a particular
Yeah,
state. Because I'm actually in a lawsuit with a group of distributors, gun manufacturers, and gun distributors. We're suing the state of New York. Uh, I'm in a lawsuit against the ATF because the ATF is coming after gun stores, mom and pop, smaller gun stores. So I'm suing them over what they're doing there, and then also, of course, the bump stock.
yeah. What is the ATF doing to gun stores right now?
So currently, right now, um, if a gun store, well, the ATF walks into your gun store and they actually do an inspection of the gun store, and they find out that you're making very small, just minor paperwork errors, such as, on the particular box there's a box that says county on the box on the form that you're supposed to fill out when you walk into the gun store. Whenever you walk into the gun store, you're going to fill out a firearms transaction record. When you fill out that firearms transaction record, we're going to call the FBI. We're going to do a background check on you. They're going to tell us proceed, out you go with the gun, delay, you have to wait 3 business days, or denied. All right. And when you fill out that paperwork, if you make a mistake on that paperwork as far as the county, let's say you look at it and you see country, you don't see county, and you put USA. Because you put USA, you didn't put the actual county that you're in, the gun store actually gets a ping for that. And if we have, X amount of number of those, then what will happen is they will revoke the gun store's federal firearms license and shut them down because of that small little minor paperwork error that
Yes.
you made. The way the law and the rule is supposed to be set up is that if a gun store is actually transferring firearms to prohibited people, then they're committing a crime. But just because someone made a small little error there on that address, that's not putting the gun in the hands of a prohibited person. All that is a small little paperwork error. Someone didn't cross their
Yeah.
T, they didn't dot their I. A little minor mistake. It's not putting a gun in the hands of a prohibited person. But because of that, they're trying to shut down the small mom and pop gun stores. So
Yes.
what I'm saying is they're overstepping their bounds. They're going further than what the actual law actually says. They're supposed to be an agency to assist the gun store. Gun stores are supposed to be the database for the federal government. So if someone gets their gun stolen or is recovered or something like that, we're the database for for law enforcement.
Yeah. Incidentally, what can happen? If somebody fills out that form and makes a mistake, like they write down, "Oh, I was born in 1968 instead of say 1967 or something like that." I mean, what are the implications there that could
Correct.
happen?
Right. So we we are supposed to verify that information, and so that is a
Yeah.
ping that we can take if we don't verify, because we're signing as a gun store federal firearms license dealer. I'm actually signing that I verified this person's name, I verify their address, their date of birth, and all that stuff that they're putting on the form. So if I do that, then boom, yes, I'm committing a crime.
Yeah. Yeah. So you got to check the ID and fill
Right.
out
So you have
stuff.
to check that stuff. So yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what they're doing. So it's like I said, it's minor little paperwork errors, and people make mistakes. Let's say you go
Yeah.
to you go to a hospital. How many mistakes does a hospital make on a daily
Oh
basis?
yes, yeah, and the country county thing, I can definitely see that happening. I
Oh,
mean,
easily. It happens all the time.
how many times does it happen where I'm filling out some form and there's that that line for printed name and there's that line for signature, and I know it's happened. I will reverse those. I'll sign where it says printed name, and write out I'll print my name where it says signature.
Oh yeah, it happens all the time.
I mean, now most people will just say, well, okay, but I can have a feeling. How often do they inspect you?
They can come at any time. They can
Okay,
walk in. I've been inspected like 2 or 3 times in my career that I've had a gun store, and they can come anytime. They with no notice, no contacting us or anything. They can actually just show up.
they show up. Yeah.
And then when they show up, for me, whenever they show up to me, it's usually 5 agents, 4 to 5 agents. Show up first thing in the morning, and boom, they're here for all week, entire like 5 days.
Oh wow,
They go through every piece of paper, everything, every sheet of paper that we've processed for the last year. They review all those documents.
that has got to be really tedious and boring. I bet.
Hmm.
I who would take a job like that? Yeah. Well, anyway, but I suspect it's probably you probably end up with people here who really don't like guns working for this organization, or I don't know what, or if you want to comment on this, maybe you don't want to comment on this, but
Oh, I have no idea. I don't know what
yeah,
goes through their heads at all.
yeah. But they just show up and they're there for the whole week, going through all your paperwork and inspecting everything. I mean, do they ever, I suppose if they wanted to, they could probably come up with other violations. You hear, for example, and it seems like back in when police would harass gay bars, they would always come up with fire code violations and stuff like that. Just ways to. You get anything like that or not?
No. Well, we did have some things with COVID. During COVID in 2020,
Yeah,
we had people that were calling, and they called themselves ratting us out because we did not close, we did not shut down. And
yeah,
so, you know, and I'm like, what do you mean close or shut down? I'm a business, and I'm supposed. How am I supposed to pay my bills if I don't, open up? And I don't understand. I don't understand the concept of
yeah,
some city council member or mayor telling me that I have to close my business. You don't have the right, the authority to tell me I have to close my business. And so, uh, or to regulate my business in that way. My business is regulated through the federal government,
yeah,
and as far as that concerned. So if
yeah,
Congress writes a bill, Congress creates a law, then boom, I'm dead in the water. That's what I have to follow, not because a mayor decides that they're going to shut us down. So they did during COVID. March 13th, I call that D-Day, is when everything shut down in 2020. I did have a group of people show up. I had a police officer from the Austin Police Department show up. I had a fire marshal from the fire department show up, and I also had a code enforcement officer show up, all at the same time, to inspect us and see what was going on and why we were open and what we were doing inside. And so, being that I'm a gun store, what I did was I, walked outside the gun store and let them know, they couldn't come in. This is my business, and I have a right to refuse anyone to walk into the business. I don't care who you are. So unless the building's on fire, unless I need, police assistance because there's a crime being committed, then none of them had a right to walk into this business. They were committing trespass. They were criminally being trespassed.
yeah.
So I refused to let them inside the door, and so that shut that down immediately.
So it's mostly the feds you deal with in this business. You don't deal with any state bureaucrats or even local bureaucrats that much.
It's There are some state things that we have to follow because the
Yeah,
state can come down and do certain things, but mostly we deal with the federal government. So mostly I deal with the ATF. I've dealt with the FBI. I've dealt with the CIA. I've dealt with all your different agencies, one way, shape, or form.
has it sometimes happened that maybe you've had a crime committed and somebody's traced back and said, "Oh, they bought it at this shop," and has that happened? And then what happens then?
Oh, well, firearm traces happen all the time. So what happens is, let's
Yeah.
say a gun is recovered, or a gun was stolen, or something happened with a particular firearm. They're going to contact the manufacturer of the gun and say, "Hey, who did you sell? Who did you transfer the gun to?" Manufacturer's going to say, and this happens immediately. It happens pretty quick. They can say, "I transfer the firearm to this particular distributor." Then that distributor's going to say, "Hey, I transferred the gun to this particular gun store." They come to me, and I can tell them, "Hey, I transferred the firearm to this particular person here."
Okay. Yeah. So that's how they go
Yeah,
on
so
the board.
firearm traces actually happen pretty quick. It's pretty easy, and our system is all
Mhm.
electronic, so it's a database.
Yeah.
I can log into, and I can tell them, who I transferred a firearm to any given time.
And every gun has a serial number, and every gun has a signature on the bullet, so you can
Just about.
so
I
you
don't
can
know
see.
about well, I don't. We don't do anything with bullets as far as tracking bullets or signatures on bullets. I don't do anything with that. That's up to law enforcement.
But for example, they can look at a bullet and find and say this bullet was shot from that gun,
It leaves
that
a it
exactly
leaves
that gun.
it leaves a fingerprint. So just like your fingerprints, you touch
Yeah.
something, it leaves a fingerprint. They're gonna have to get your print to match it up to that print.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. So yeah, you don't sell bullets. I suppose there's a lot of red tape and stuff in selling bullets as well as there is with
We
guns.
I mean we sell ammunition, but I don't get
Yeah.
into the tracing of bullets or anything like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. That's very interesting. Who are the main villains in the world of gun rights right now?
It's always going to be your federal government, so they're the ones that we're going to have to worry about. And then in certain states, Texas, we're not going to have an issue with Texas for quite a while, because if Texas falls, then the rest of the country will fall, when it comes to gun rights. So I don't see us having a problem with Texas any near future. Not I don't even see that happening in my lifetime, but it's
Yeah.
possible. Anything's possible, but I just don't see it.
Yeah. What
But
what
as
would
far
you
as
say?
other states, you have like Washington State, they're having issues. California's always going to have problems. Um, and so New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Maryland, Massachusetts, they're doing crazy stuff over there. Illinois is doing just insane stuff. So, it's your typical states, your typical problem areas are always going to be, bad problems.
Yeah.
Um, and all people need to do is just show up and vote and make sure they let their voices be heard. Because if the majority of the people that are pro Second Amendment show up and vote at the polls, or show up at their particular capital when they need to, then they won't lose any of these rights. That other states like Oregon and Washington State and California are losing, because you got to keep in mind those people that are in Oregon, Washington State, California, they're moving to Texas, and we need to make sure that we stand up and we vote and show our numbers, because we're pro
Yeah.
Second Amendment. We want to keep those rights.
Yeah. What's this? I don't. Maybe you don't pay much attention to it, but what's the state around the world? It's mostly worse than America, from what I hear. But
Don't know, because I know, as far as I served 12 years in the United States Army,
yeah.
the United States is the police, for the rest of the world. Um,
Yeah.
Whenever there's a bad enough problem, our job is to go over there and take care of it and solve the issue. As far as the United States, I'm going to stay right here in the United States. I'm going to stay right here in Texas. It's the last one I got, and I got to stay and defend it. I don't plan on leaving here, and I feel that as long as I show up, I let my voice be heard. I We make sure that we keep our elected officials doing what they're supposed to do. If they're not, then we show up and we call their feet to the fire. Not to worry about what's going on in any other country. I don't care about what's going on in any other state. I care only about Texas. That's the only one that matters to me.
Yes, of course. Does Austin or Travis County try to do anything, or not?
Well, they can't. They don't have that authority. So when it comes to different counties, when it comes to different cities, the state actually, we have a preemptive law where only the Texas legislature, can actually regulate firearms. Cities and counties don't have that authority to do that. So if the city of Austin decides that they're going to ban AR-15s, which they said that once before, they said that last year. We're going to ban AR-15s. They actually don't have that right to do that. They don't have the authority to do it. They can't do it. They don't have the power to do it. Only the Texas legislature can do that. The House and the Senate and the governor has to sign it in order for them to ban AR-15s. So they can say those things, and they can, scare people, but they don't have the authority to do it.
What are some really good court cases or really bad court cases that have come up in regarding gun rights that you can think of?
Oh goodness, I haven't. Oh, I don't know, to be honest with you. Yeah, that I don't
Okay.
know. Yeah.
Where do you where do you think we all going from here? I mean, it seems like to me uh, you care only about Texas, but I mean, do you ever think about you never think about going to Florida or going to New Hampshire or going to South Dakota? I guess so, because those are
No.
also states that have gun
Yeah. There.
rights. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think there are any. We're not gonna have any issues in the Dakotas. I don't think. I don't think Florida to be a make too much of a major problem in Florida. You know, the biggest thing that we have to worry about, I think, is the next shooting, if it's the next mass shooting, and is your particular legislative body in session where they can actually create a law at that moment in time, because things tend to happen when it's directly after a particular incident.
Yeah.
So, like, and for example, in Texas, we in 2017, I think it was, we actually legalized all types of knives in Texas, where you can walk down the street with any size knife in Texas. You can have a sword, an axe, switchblade. It all became legal in 2017, I believe is the year. Well, that particular year happened to be a stabbing at University of Texas campus. That stabbing on University of Texas campus happened the day that the Texas legislature the House was going to vote on the knife bill. That stabbing happened that morning. And because of that, they came down with some restrictions of it. They said, okay, you can have any size knife, you can walk down the street with it, but what you cannot do is you cannot take a knife where the length of the blade is over 5.5 inches, inside of a school, college campus, and they came down with a bunch of different restrictions, all because of the stabbing. You know, even though stabbing someone is actually illegal, it's a felony to kill someone. But because
Yes.
it's hard for some people to understand that concept. But because of that stabbing, they dialed it back a little bit, and they came down with some restrictions. They still passed the bill, but came down with some restrictions of it.
Yeah. This is what I don't get. I mean, murder is illegal. Armed robbery is illegal. Uh, all this stuff is already illegal, and but then when it happens, it's like we have to make something else illegal, and somehow that will stop it from happening. I don't know where this logic comes from. Where what I mean, where does this mentality come from that murder is already illegal, but somehow making and the fact that it being illegal didn't stop this murder from happening, but somehow making guns illegal will stop it. Where does
Right.
that I don't know what that mentality is, and it almost seems like there has to be there's some other agenda here.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, I don't know, because I remember, during Christmas, there was in Wisconsin, the guy used a vehicle and ran over a bunch of people, killed some people doing a Christmas parade, and he used a
Yeah,
car to do it. I remember here in Austin, one of the biggest things that happened here was a guy was in a vehicle, took a vehicle and drove it through a crowd of people doing South by Southwest. I remember here in Austin when a guy um, actually used different bombs around the city. We had the bombing
yeah,
that were in the mail, and people were afraid to open up their UPS
yeah.
and FedEx packages and things of that nature because of the
Mhm.
bombs that were being delivered to people's homes and stuff like that, or shipped to people, in the mail. And so those are some of the big things. And then of course we've had some shootings here. We've had a shooting at
Yes,
University of Texas campus at the Tower. We've had a shooting in
yeah,
downtown Austin by some teenagers who were actually, you know, under investigation of a previous shooting. But then your district attorney didn't do anything in that particular case, so they were able to commit another crime. And
yeah,
so, you have all these little different little things like this. And here's what it boils down to. What it boils down to is the majority of your cities that are actually the hot button cities, the cities that are causing that have the most crimes, or I would say some of the nastiest crimes, are going to be cities that actually have a Democrat appointed or Democrat elected DA, and that DA is not prosecuting crimes like they're supposed to prosecute crimes. They're putting these same people back on the streets, same people committing crimes, and they're causing havoc all over the city. And we see those same types of things that are happening in Austin, Texas, where you have people that are in it, mostly teenagers, young people that are committing crimes, and they're not locking them up and putting them in jail. Instead, they're giving them a pass, put them back out in the street, and they're committing crimes. A young man, was just killed at a Dairy Queen here in Austin, Texas, and everyone was also saying, "Oh my goodness, young man was just killed in Dairy Queen." Well, you know what? That young man beat his grandmother a little while, a few years ago or a year or so ago. Beat his grandmother, committed other heinous crimes, and then all
Yes.
of a sudden he ends up in Dairy Queen and gets shot and killed and becomes the victim. So sad, too bad. That's the judge's fault. The judge should have did something about this. That guy's death is on the judge's, soul or the judge's heart, not mine.
It seems more and more that we're getting to this point that there's more fear of if somebody breaks into my house, I'm more afraid of shooting them than they are of the consequences of breaking into my house. And I don't know where that happens, and I don't know how we get back out of that. But there seems to be what Robert Bitnato calls the excuse making industry. Somehow it's not all their fault, and they're just and all these people who commit crimes are just victims anyway. And I don't know where that comes from, but
Yeah, yeah, I don't understand that concept for me. Because yes, I have a right to my property. Yes, you don't have a right to take the property from me illegally. We have a saying that we have here on the wall, and it says, "I have a right by the Lord and the law to take back what belongs to me."
yeah, and there's always this line of, "Well, you didn't have to shoot him." It's like, well,
You
yeah.
didn't have to take the property.
How do I know? How do I know what's going to happen? It's somebody tries to rob me or something like that. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. And
The choice and the decision was in that person's hands. They had a decision or choice to not take something that was not theirs,
yeah, or not enter something where they
or
weren't
not
allowed.
enter something that was not theirs. Exactly. So the decision was on them totally, 100%.
Yeah, and it seems like, and I've got to ask too, Michael. I noticed it, 30 years ago, even when I was just starting to vote. Why the news media has always been extremely biased against guns. It, Before the internet, it was obvious. Where do you think that comes from?
They're trying to get more clicks nowadays. More clicks, more views, more likes,
Mm-hmm.
and guns are sell. Whether it's the gun store, whether it's the media, it sells and it gets more clicks, more likes and views. And I actually asked a bunch of media outlets out there. One particular a couple of years ago, I asked them. I said, "How come you guys don't talk about suicides? How come you don't do news stories on
Yeah,
suicides?" And you know
yeah,
what they told me? They said the reason, Michael, we don't do news stories on suicides because if we did do a news story on the suicide, then more people would commit suicide. So I said, why are you doing all these stories on shootings?
yeah. And and I think a lot of cases with these mass shootings, unfortunately, it's often a case where I think, obviously I don't know anybody who's done this, but it seems like it's a case where they wanted to commit suicide, but they wanted to go out with a bang, so to speak.
Hmm.
So they decide not only to take themselves out, but to take a bunch of other people out with them. And
Oh,
it's a and I say this as somebody who had a distant relative who survived Virginia Tech.
right.
Yeah, and as far as I know, she survived mainly because she was good at playing dead. Uh, you know, but anyway, it's a yeah. There's definitely something going on here, and I know sometimes you also hear some of those theories that it's you have somebody who's just walking around with a gun and acting crazy, and he's just kind of hoping the cops will shoot him. I think they call that
Yes.
suicide by cop. But yeah, so uh, what do you what what kind of reforms would you like to see right now? Or are there any reforms right now? I mean, obviously getting rid of some of these agencies, but what else do you think would make things better?
Less government control.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
I mean, yeah, and we haven't
we,
even
we're
talked
to the
to.
point we're to the point where we tax everything. We tax so much. This paying property taxes forever is just insane to
Oh
me.
yeah,
I don't understand that concept at all. How in the world, you have people that are seniors and they're supposed to pay this property taxes forever. They don't
hmm
ever stop. It never
oh yeah,
never ends or anything like that. All that stuff like that. That's just insane. That's crazy. So that's going to be some of the issues. We need smaller government, less government. Um, and that's what we should be doing.
yeah. And so you've taught firearms. What's usually do you do when people come take a firearms class? Are they people who are buying their first gun, or what do you tell them when people are buying their first gun?
I tell them they need to take a course, they need to take a class.
Yeah. So,
Need to take a training course and learn about the firearm, learn what the laws are, learn what you can and you can't do, learn what to do if you have to use the gun, learn those are the things that people definitely need to worry about.
certainly, yeah, yeah. So yeah, and you still offer classes, or
Absolutely, yes.
yeah? How long does that usually go when you offer the classes? It's
We do the classes every Thursday, every Saturday. We do the light scary handgun course on Sunday. We do a beginner firearm safety course. The beginner firearm safety course is a course designed to introduce people to guns and also tell them a little bit, a touch on the laws, the gun laws. Um, Typically, I have people that take that class where it's court ordered, meaning that they've already committed a crime, and now since they committed a crime, the judge has either ordered them to take a firearm safety course or they're taking a firearm safety course because their attorney says this will help them reduce, the punishment or get a lesser offense. So they're having to take a firearm safety course for a particular crime they committed.
what crimes have they usually committed?
Unlawfully carrying a weapon,
Okay.
maybe discharging the firearm, firing a gun in the air during the 4th of July or Memorial Day or something crazy, or New Year's or something of that nature. Accidentally taking a gun on the airport, I'm sorry, the airline, going
Oh
through
yeah.
security when they're not supposed to. Maybe having the gun on them when they're going to go vote to a particular polling location. Because every other day throughout the year, I go to HEB, the grocery store. I can walk in the grocery store every day throughout the year. But if for some particular reason the HEB is the polling location, one particular, you know, time out of the year, and they actually make that mistake of going to to HEBs when it's a polling location, they're committing a felony.
Oh wow. Jeez, I never. Yeah, that is wild. So yeah, and this is a place where you're used to going in and it being okay, and
That's right. Exactly.
then suddenly it's not okay. Yeah, I
And
can
suddenly
imagine.
it's not okay.
Yeah.
So that's
Wow.
why I encourage people to, if you're going to carry a firearm, I encourage them to come to
Yeah.
me and take a class before the fact. Learn what the laws are before you start carrying a gun. For example, the post office. It's a felony to have a firearm in your vehicle in the parking lot of a post office.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a felony. So, and no one, and people don't think about that. They don't think, oh, as long as I don't go into the building, I should be fine. No, it's a felony in the building. It's a felony in your vehicle in the parking lot because that's post office property. That's federal
Yeah. This
property.
is this is not. Yeah. This show's not legal advice. Are there any other parking lots like that?
So any federal property. So you're looking at the post office, the VA, Army Corps of Engineer property, anything that's owned and maintained by the Army Corps of Engineer. That's all going to be, yeah, illegal even in your vehicle on that property. Military bases,
Yeah, military, and that's all kinds of guns. Like that's even a rifle or something in your trunk or something like that.
anything. That's right. No weapons at all.
Wow, that's very interesting. Yeah. So
Hmm.
so yeah, maybe the easiest thing really is just not park at the post office and just. But yeah.
Yeah. And I do want people to, go to my website, go to michaelcargill.com, where you can follow the different court cases and look at some of the different things I'm involved in. It's michaelcargill.com. If you want to look at something as far as taking a course or something like that, go to centraltexasgunworks.com. You can find me on Twitter, Michael D. Cargill, on Facebook, Michael D. Cargill, on social media and stuff like that. And you can search for Central Texas Gunworks, the name of the gun store, to find us on social media there as well. So definitely encourage you to follow us. But I post updates all the different gun laws on my Twitter page and all that good kind of stuff. So definitely follow me on social
Yeah.
media, and that way you can keep up to date on what's going on.
Yeah, it sounds like you need to go. But one thing I did want to ask: are there any threats, say, coming down from like the United Nations or anybody like that?
I don't perceive anything coming down from the United Nations. That's got to pass through Congress in order for
Yeah.
any of that stuff to take effect. So I don't think that's going to pass the muster of Congress. Currently, right now, the Republicans are in charge of the House, um, and so nothing's going to get through there as long as we do our checks and balances. Make sure either we have a Republican in the White House, or we have the Republicans in charge of the Senate, or the Republicans in charge of the House. Because if for some reason the Democrats get in charge of all three, then anything is possible. And so we need to make sure that we keep that from happening during that time frame if they are in charge of all three.
Okay, well, it's been great having you on here. I'm Chris Baker. You can buy my novel Escape from the Village. Please follow my channel, like the channel, subscribe, give the video a thumbs up, and thank you, Michael Cargill. And we are out.
Thank you very much.